Thank you, delegates, and I do thank you for that prompt return to the auditorium for the recommencement of conference. Delegates, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Mike Baird. Mr Baird has represented Manly in the New South Wales Parliament since 2007. Following the election of the New South Wales Liberal and Nationals government on the 26th of March 2011. Mike Baird was appointed Treasurer, and in September 2012 he gained the Industrial Relations portfolio. Mr Baird was elected Leader of the New South Wales Liberal Party at a party room meeting on the 17th of April 2014, and later that day was sworn in as the state's 44th Premier by the former Governor, Professor Marie Bashir. The Liberals and Nationals will return to office under Mr Baird's leadership at the state election held on the 28th of March 2015. Mr Baird entered politics following an 18-year banking career, including corporate banking, scrutinisation, debt capital markets and project finance in Australia, London and Hong Kong. Prior to his election to Parliament, Mr Baird was Head of Institutional Banking for HSBC in Australia and New Zealand. Under Mike Baird's direction as Treasurer, New South Wales moved from being the economic laggard of the nation to the leading state economy on the measure of economic and jobs growth. Delegates, would you please welcome the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Mike Baird.
Thank you, Keith, for your kind introduction. Can I firstly just start by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land and pay my respects to elders past and present, and acknowledge their guardianship of this land for thousands of years. Can I acknowledge the Minister, Paul Toole? Great to have him here. Keith, together with Donna, thank you for your leadership of the sector. Can I acknowledge the Lord Mayor of Wollongong, Gordon Bradbury, the many mayors, councillors, general managers that are here. And as Keith said in his address earlier this morning, there's no doubt this has been a difficult year, but I remain very optimistic and positive about the future, not only of the relationship between state government and local government, but also about our joint intent on making a difference for the people that we love and serve. And I acknowledge that there are many people in this room that have done incredible things, whether it be Lillian Bradley, who's the long-serving Mayor of Cobar, so committed to her town they named the retirement village after her. Rick Furman, the Mayor of Temora, obviously runs a menswear business in town, but he also has a deep love and pride for his shire. Gordon Bradbury, a former Uniting Church minister, now serving as the Wollongong community as the Mayor, and Phyllis Miller as the Mayor of Forbes, who led and supported her community in the recent floods. And I was there seeing the incredible work she was doing. Or someone like Jean Hay, who many of you know, who's spent 30 years serving her community in local government and across many parts of that. She told me that 30 years, it's only half time, another 30 years to go. So great to have Jean and all of you here, but all of you are united on one thing, and it's the same with myself and the same with every member of the state government, and that is to make a difference, going into service of our community, to make a difference to them. And when I come down to Wollongong and the Illawarra, there are many things that we have done. Whether it be the Princess Highway, whether it be the Berry Bypass, whether it be Albion Park Rail, or the work which is underway, or the work around Gerringong, close to $1.6 billion in the Princess Highway, over $100 million invested in schools, the Bulli Aged Care Centre, part of the $100 million allocated to local projects on the back of the lease of Port Kembla, the support into BlueScope in terms of providing deferment of payroll tax or upgrades at Wollongong Hospital. We continue, whether it be here or across this state, to do everything we can to improve services and build infrastructure. And that is our determination. And we do it together. We do it together. And certainly reform is not easy. Indeed, it's very difficult. And I have to acknowledge that. And it's been difficult for many in this room. And change, whatever it is never easy. But if you go back to where we started on this reform process, it started on the journey because local governments in New South Wales asked us to. They wanted a process to look at the boundaries which had been in place for almost 100 years. And ultimately they said, let's work together on a way forward. Now, we did provide incentives to councils. We did ask and work with councils to help us in terms of shaping those boundaries for the future. Many agreed, many didn't agree, but we consulted significantly. Indeed, over 4 years, we provided numerous opportunities for input during those 4 years, and as part of formally considering the process for mergers, we asked for the input, we received the input, and we came to the position we finally did. Now, where are we 6 months in? And I think we're starting to see significant progress. We said that there'd be some savings, and there are some quick examples I can point to. Georges River, $250,000 saved for tendering road works as one council rather than two. And those procurement savings are examples of when you have more scale, there's a capacity to drive better deals, which means you've got more money to put into services, infrastructure, or downward pressure on rates. Snowy Valleys, similarly. Capacity to get consolidated insurance premiums, $81,000. The Northern Beaches Council has got to close to $4 million in savings in its first 150 days. Together, we've worked together. The review of the rating system has been acknowledged as something that needs to be done, and that is being closely looked at by the Minister. We've established a state borrowing facility to provide low interest rate loans, and there's already TCORT's provide over 14 councils $100 million in loans for new infrastructure, upgraded airports, roads and arts centres. And collectively, there's close to $150 billion in assets across our councils, which does give some capacity to look at borrowings to supplement councils' activities and invest more back into the community. And those indicative rates at the moment are about down at close to 3% for 10 years and even up to close to 3.5% for 20 years. So there's a capacity as the councils come together to look for additional opportunities in investing back into the community. Now, we've gone through, as I've said on many occasions, a difficult period, but a period that I think we're going to come out stronger. And I generally believe that. Whether there be an opportunity to get to the position of all of us 100% agreeing, I don't think we'll get there. But I certainly believe that we're united in trying to make the best possible difference to every ratepayer that we have the privilege to represent. And I know that there still continue some legal challenges, and that's absolutely fine. Of course, use every right in terms of pursuing those challenges, but ultimately what I'm so determined to do is to continue to deliver the benefits of what we're seeing. And I can tell you we're already seeing huge benefits, because it's not just the savings that are generated, it's what you can do as you come together. Georges River Council, they've provided a $75 rebate to 3,300 pensioners with some of those early savings that have been identified. A good news story there. In terms of some of the rural communities that feared losing services if merged with their larger neighbour, but in fact what we've seen is actually the opposite. The opposite has taken place. In Wellington, as an example, there was a pool that was costing $50,000 a year because of the leaks. Well, there's been a capacity to actually fix the pool, to stop that cost. They've also had the capacity to reduce the time of DAs from hundreds of days down to 40 days with increased staff and capability, previously relying on fly-in, fly-out staff to actually deal with the DAs. We now, in Urana and Howlong, we now have streets that are being swept and cleaned that were unable to be done previously. The Mid-Coast Council provided Centrelink services in Gloucester. The increased capacity provided them a capacity to provide those Centrelink services, and if it had closed, locals would have had to travel an additional 75 kilometres by car. Communities are receiving new services. I mean, in terms of the Stronger Communities Fund, There is a great excitement amongst the merged councils on how do we invest this to make a huge difference for the community today and for the next generation. And there are many incredibly exciting projects that are under consideration. In Armidale, upgraded mountain bike, rugby league and equestrian facilities. So they've looked at the capacity on let's invest in sporting facilities in particular, and there's great excitement about those. In Dubbo, $350,000 for some projects into theatre, upgrading a theatre, $40,000 for replacement of water pipes, so water quality a critical issue there, and they have been delivered. Now friends, that is just a small start on what I strongly believe will be great benefits, not just for next month, next year, even the next few years, I generally believe for the next generation to come. And ultimately that is the only motivation. And I know that we haven't always agreed on how we have come to this position, but I know that every single one of you would want to see those sort of benefits delivered into your communities. So I continue to ask, and I thank Keith for his comments this morning, wanting to work together to continue to build on these reforms, to deliver great outcomes for our communities, because I strongly believe that we can. Whilst change remains a difficult thing across many elements, I do want to thank everyone that is constructively, both in the old councils and the new councils, and those councillors that have said we want to try and make it work. We want to try and continue to serve our community, continue to do so. I can assure you that my minister and I are determined to do everything we can to help and facilitate that, and I strongly believe at the end of it we will come out stronger. So I thank you for your support and constructive work over the past 12 months, and I strongly believe that in years to come we'll look back and this state and our communities be stronger on the back of the work we do together. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Delegates, I'd like to thank the Premier for his address. He did make a request that in the time allocated due to his other commitments that he would like to keep it to 10 minutes to maximise the opportunity to do a Q&A with delegates. May I just say that your attentiveness during that address was very pleasing to the overwhelming majority of people in this room. I know that you will extend that same courtesy to the speakers at the microphones as they ask their questions, because everyone in this room also would like to hear their question and the Premier's response. And I know that you will do it.
Mr. President.
Donna Reigate will facilitate this facility. She will call the microphone number in the sequence that she's got it, and we'll now ask the Premier those questions. Thank you, Donna.
And I figure we may as well start from microphone one.
Thank you very much. Mr. Premier, thank you for your address, and thank you to you and to Minister Toole for taking the time out of your schedule to come to Wollongong today and address us, and it shows me that you value local government, so I'm grateful to you for that. My question to you is about sporting fields on public school grounds. Sporting field allocation is an issue that, probably like most of the communities here, we at the Hills devote great resources and time to. We have a shortfall in the supply or stock of sporting fields versus demand, and demand in our shire is growing at an enormous rate. We currently have an unfortunate situation where we have local codes and clubs at war with one another over allocations, even though we are working really hard to maximise the use of our assets. In a perfect world, we'd simply build more. However, the enormous cost, the enormous land cost in the Hills, probably like other communities, is prohibitive.
Come on, get on with the
Questions.
I'm getting to it. It breaks my heart to see school fields, the many school fields in our shire, lying dormant, dead assets in the evenings on weekends, the very time when our community teams and clubs need them.
Come on.
My question to you, Mr. Premier, is would you be amenable to supporting the co-use of public school sporting fields between councils and New South Wales education from a policy perspective to allow best use of government assets and maximise the opportunity for as many people as possible to participate in organised sport in their local communities.
Well, there's 2 minutes gone.
Okay, no, thanks, Yvonne. No, certainly, look, it's undoubtedly one of the big challenges. I mean, growth, particularly in metropolitan Sydney, with limited space, growing population, sporting groups and clubs are obviously struggling. So, being smarter with our existing assets, in terms of schools, where there is fields that potentially could be used, that's absolutely something we should be considering. So, the Minister for Education is considering that at the moment, and obviously there would need to be a formal policy, but it could be on a council-by-council basis. But we have to be open to that because obviously playing fields are a critical part of our kids, and obviously we need to ensure that we've got them to cater for the population, not just the schools. So certainly that is something the Minister for Education is considering more broadly. So it's a very good proposal put forward. So
Thank you.
Okay, we might use the timer and limit questions perhaps to 30 seconds so that we get as many as possible. Over to microphone number 2.
Thank you, Sally Betts, the Mayor of Waverley. Premier, thank you for being here. My question relates to the relationship of the Greater Sydney Commission and the government in regard to infrastructure. For example, we've been dealing with the government for many years on a Bondi Junction to Bondi mass transit system. And we've been talking about light rail and or metro. How does the Greater Sydney Commission fit into that discussion, and do we need to start the negotiations again? Thank you.
Well, the answer to the last one, no. And in the spirit of getting many questions in, I'll keep my answer as short as possible. So the Greater Sydney Commission, for the first time, rather than state government sort of broadly thinking about where it needs to put infrastructure, population growth, the Greater Sydney Commission has been charged with implementing the metropolitan strategy and then working with individual councils with its implementation and then providing to government views on the infrastructure that's required to support it. So it's bringing everything together, both the schools, the hospitals, the transport and the roads, right alongside the forecast population projections and creating an overall plan. So they will be centre to the budget process. And they'll work right alongside council. So they will build on the work that's already done, but it'll be much more coordinated, much more comprehensive with the appropriate expertise within the Commission. So it's an exciting time to bring it together, but they will be a very strong coordinating voice across the overall strategy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Microphone 3.
Thank you. Meredith Shield from Hunters Hill Council. Thank you for being here. My question goes to your capacity and to please, personally, come and communicate with us regarding forced council mergers. I understand your position and you believing that you're doing the right thing, forcing the council amalgamation of Hunters Hill, Lane Cove and Ryde and several other councils. We have a very good council, a highly educated council. We have looked across every single aspect of this proposed merger of our council. It does not have the support of our community, nor of Lane Cove or Ryde. And we know for a fact that it is not going to deliver the outcomes that you want it to deliver. We know that there are alternatives that will, and we have asked on several occasions for you personally to come and listen to us, listen to our community, and we would really like very much for you to commit just to the respect to come and talk to us about it. So that we can come to a compromise that works for everybody. I think it's important, not just for Hunters Hill, by the way, but all the councils that you are currently in court cases with, because each of them are a well-functioning council with good community backup, and each of them have put enormous thought into this. We're not people who...
Thank you.
Come on, time.
Yeah, okay, no, that's fine. So look, I'm happy to meet with you individually, so that's fine. I can organise that and we can go through it. In terms of the context, I mean, I know people have various views about potential savings, but I just outlined a couple, and there are so many more. Procurement, so the contracts, issuing road contracts, insurance.
We're all highly educated, and we've all been through all of this.
And I think from a community point of view, there's potentially hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, you know the numbers, that can go into additional services or more infrastructure. So, you know, there's 14,000 people within Hunters Hill in terms of, as a council, with a head office right over the top. There are some councils that are doing an incredible job with 300,000 people. So we've tried to compromise in the middle. That's literally where we've tried to in a metropolitan basis. But happy to meet with you individually. So we will organise.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Microphone number 4.
Thank you, Donna. Premier, my question is in regards to your comments earlier that you had conversations with communities, and a little like Hunters Hill, Shell Harbour, you did not have a conversation with us. IPART did not recommend a merger. The independent review panel did not recommend a merger. We found out about it on the 18th of December. Now, you can give me all the stories about how we can save money, but we're already doing that. We put our hand up to be a pilot joint organisation. We do joint procurement. We share resources. We are doing absolutely everything that we can to ensure efficiencies in our community. And we are financially sustainable, as is Wollongong. Will you now withdraw that merger proposal, given that you said you're listening to community? Well, we're talking. We do not want to merge, and we want you to withdraw that merger, please.
And you know, we undertook a long process. I mean, the Boundaries Commission process did engage directly with the community. And look, I know there are some good things that Shell Harbour Council is doing. I know there are some good things that Wollongong are doing. I think collectively you can do great things. I've outlined a number of reasons on why I think you can still get great outcomes for the people. So, you want to,
Number 5. Yeah, we're just following the numbers.
Okay, well, I can do the numbers then.
Thanks, Premier. Just a quick question, hopefully with a quick answer. What date can you give everyone in this room when the New South Wales government will actually start funding public libraries properly and fairly and stop offloading the cost onto local councils?
Yeah, look, you make a very good point. I've heard this back a fair bit. There is real concern that there is that sense. I can assure you there is no purposeful cost shifting in relation to libraries, but I've heard the concerns, and I think we need to do more for libraries, no doubt about it. So as part of the discussions, and I might take that up with Keith and Donna in terms of that particular issue, because I think we can do more, and I've heard that loud and clear. So we'll take that up and we'll respond in the next few months. So thank you. 6.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. My question is about vocational education and training. As you would know, the 2014 Vet Fee Help data from the Department of Education show that completion rates at public TAFEs are 87% compared to 44% for the private sector, that TAFEs are taking half of our students and only 20% of Vet Fee Help funding, and as a result of this, it costs $73,000 of public money to educate a student at a private VET provider and only $10,500 to educate a student through TAFE. My question to you on this information, when is the government going to admit that the contestable funding and marketisation of VET has failed and return TAFE's budget back where it belongs?
Well, we've increased funding to the overall vet sector quite significantly, and importantly, I mean, it's not just our policy. I mean, it's also Labor's policy for contestable funding. So you agree with that, yeah? But what's it all about? Ultimately, what we want, and the Minister is, I think, the new Minister for Skills is engaging very constructively with the sector. We want to be in a position where we're promoting it. And I can tell you the TAFE sector is not only viewed strongly here, it's actually viewed very strongly across Asia Pacific. As I've visited our key trading partners, particularly India and China, our TAFE sector is key to our ongoing relationship. They are relying very heavily upon it. So we have a great system, but what we're trying to do, how do we efficiently, and you would have seen he recently announced a sort of one TAFE structure, so bringing back a centralised approach in the sense of overseeing programs and capital and the delivery of the TAFE service. So we are determined to make TAFE the best it possibly can be and provide as many courses as we possibly can. Because ultimately, yes, we've asked for more efficiencies, which is effectively just smaller head offices, which I think everyone agrees with. If we have that, then we've got more capacity to educate our students, the next generation. So we're absolutely aligned with this. I understand there's been challenges on the journey, but the new minister, I think, is outlining a vision that is getting a lot of buy-in across TAFE New South Wales, and we'll continue to work with them and you, because there's no doubt they're central to our future. Not everyone's going to go to university. Skills are a critical part of the education of our kids and the next generation, and TAFE plays a critical role in that. We absolutely agree. So thank you. Thank you. Haven't I already done 5? Oh, I have. See, that was a trick.
It's a new 5.
Well, no, I'll go to 7, and if I have time, I'll come back. That's okay. 7, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. President. Councillor Michael Banasic, Wollongong Council. Thank you for your visits down to Picton, which we had the bad storm down there, and I know many other towns, including Forbes, have had the same problems. The big problem we've got at the moment is people aren't shopping locally or whatever because they feel the town's closed, and there's a large economic turn down. Is there any help the state government can give towns like Picton, etc., economic, if you like, promotion, funding to try, bring back more jobs, etc.? Because I know many casual jobs have gone from many of the shops, and which is not good for the local economy. And I know council, we're providing some infrastructure stuff, but if you guys could give us some funding to assist us, that would be wonderful. And I know there are many other towns that are probably worse off.
Yeah. No, look, can I just make the point to congratulate not only Picton Council and Forbes, who I've acknowledged, but also previously Dungog and Maitland. Look, my interaction with all of you was nothing short of inspiring. I mean, you saw firsthand that when our communities are hurting and in real need, everyone came together, and all the councils should be very proud of how you responded. In terms of Picton specifically, what I've seen, the local member has asked for a contribution. There's a huge festival, I think, being put together where they've asked for state government support in terms of encouragement of all the businesses and opportunities that are on, in the town. And we're very happy to support that. So if there's specific proposals, please bring them forward. I mean, we obviously want to help with, to clean up and to get people back on their feet, but also there's a lag in terms of the economy, no doubt about it. And I've seen, there's a number of businesses, when I was obviously just there a few weeks ago, that aren't going to reopen, so that has a knock-on impact there. So how can we continue to encourage and support? So specific proposals, and any of those councils where obviously there's impacts at the moment, please bring them forward, because we want to help going outside of just the natural disaster assistance allocations and policies if we can. So please bring them forward. Thank you. 8.
Mr Premier, Karen McEwen, Penrith City Council. Mr Premier, I wanted to ask you about linking Western Sydney cities. And in particular, I wanted to ask you about the government, if the government will commit to a north-south rail link, which would pick up from Rouse Hill down through Penrith, pick up through the airport, the science park, down to Campbelltown in the south. What we basically need out there is an M7 replicated in rail linking our communities. Campbelltown and Penrith share campuses of the same university, but if I wanted to go to an early morning campus over at Campbelltown and rely on public transport, the New South Wales trip planner tells me that I should be leaving tonight.
Yeah. No.
And that's irrespective of us getting an international airport.
Yeah. No. Look, I understand. The north-south across Western Sydney is one of the big challenges, and one of the reasons when the federal government, obviously, it's good news in terms of Badgerys Creek. I mean, we need to get to a position on how it's going to be configured and how it's going to work. But ultimately, that's great in terms of the jobs. The connectivity between north and south across Western Sydney remains one of the big challenges, which is, as we've said to the federal government, okay, so the airport's coming, we need to look at rail links. Let's look at all options in terms of how we address that, because obviously having the capacity for the jobs and the employment more broadly that comes around the airport. The question is how we're going to provide the public transport to match. So a link to the airport is one thing, but can it support and supplement the broader public transport objectives across Western Sydney? So there's a huge amount of work going on exactly on that issue at the moment, and obviously we're working with the federal government. So to have both governments, and it'll obviously involve local councils as well, addressing that is one of the key transport strategic objectives in the next 12 months, I think. That is something that has to be realised. Thank you. Nine?
Yes, thank you, Premier, for coming today. Julie Griffiths from Blacktown City Council, third largest in New South Wales, 350,000 and growing. And the issue around infrastructure is a major issue for us out there, as you heard from Councillor McEwen. Look, my question to you is that this morning we moved a motion around domestic violence. As you know, it's a big issue in New South Wales, and particularly in Blacktown. My question is, what kind of funding is the state government putting up around those, providing those kind of services to assist councils to deliver?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things, and look, I commend Blacktown Council on their work, and I know they're particularly big in terms of the White Ribbon Breakfast, and the support for the recent refuge was very strong. I mean, Stephen and I don't always see eye to eye on things, but certainly commend the council on that work. It's incredibly important, and indeed many councils in this area. We have announced a number of proposals in relation to domestic violence, not least of which you might have seen not only increased support for victims, but also for the first time shifting the policy debate into the perpetrators. So one of the big challenges is there are high-risk offenders, that is, those that we know are high risk and they are reoffending. And if you think about it, those reoffenders are the ones that are likely to lead to tragic outcomes. So we're targeting them, and the experience across the world showed that if you target them, you've got a great capacity to make a real difference in terms of domestic violence. So we've not only targeting them, but we're also significantly investing in cultural change, so basically anger management programs for people that are identified as part of the challenges and the problems we're dealing with. So Prue Goward, as the Minister, has outlined that, and we're working collectively with local councils in areas as well. I mean, one of the things that shocks me in this whole debate is before I'd seen it, indeed before Rosie Batty was announced as Australian of the Year, I hadn't seen the details that 40% of our police work is domestic violence. 40% on a daily basis. It is mind-blowing, and we have to do more on it. So next week, I'm actually going up to Queensland, where the Queensland Premier, together with the other premiers and the Prime Minister, have basically convened a COAG summit on domestic violence, where we're looking to, everyone's bringing forward what they are doing, and we're going to see if we can take it to the next level. So I'll be cognisant in those discussions to ensure that local councils are part of that, making sure there's opportunities for us to work together. And you know, I think Blacktown City Council does a very good job and is actually leading the way in terms of how councils can respond to it. So I appreciate your work. So we'll go over. How long have we got? Yeah. Okay. Yep, sorry, no number at the back. Yep.
Premier, Linda
10.
Scott from the City of Sydney. Thanks for coming along today. I'm sure you know the recent local council elections in the City of Sydney really were a strong backlash against the reforms your government has put through to allow for up to 2 votes for rateable property owners or lessees or occupiers. That development of that role came at a cost of $12 million to our ratepayers, and going forward will cost millions of dollars more because it has to be kept up to date all the time. It's a very concerning voting system, and I think at least in the City of Sydney our residents have strongly rejected it through their vote. Can you commit to I know many worried colleagues in the room today, that these voting laws will not be rolled out to other cities across New South Wales, and that you'll, like New South Wales Labor has committed to do, that you'll repeal them in the City of Sydney given the strong protest vote against them?
Well, I mean, you could be downplaying Clover. I mean, Clover, could have got the positive vote as opposed to the negative vote. And look, there was a very simple intent there. 80% of ratepayers in the City of Sydney are businesses. And it was an opportunity to reflect on the Melbourne experience, which uses this model, which works very effectively. And in simple terms, one of the things that I saw after the decision was made, I saw the City of Sydney down there as one of the major sponsors of the New South Wales Business Chamber, which supports all small businesses. That's a small business group across the state, and was engaging constructively and positively. With the Lord Mayor, I've engaged very constructively on how we deal with the startups that are coming both into the city and are joining the city. So, look, that is the intent, and it is happening. I'm seeing the City of Sydney embrace and engage directly with the business community. In terms of the voting, I mean, it was specific to City of Sydney because of the large proportion of ratepayers that were businesses. And again, we're happy to sit down with the City of Sydney to evaluate that process, as I know that it was difficult in terms of implementation. But, having a council responding as part of its overall policies and approach, direct engagement into the business community, I think is a good thing. And I'm seeing that. But I'm happy to engage directly with council on that issue, Linda. So maybe one more, sorry.
Good on you.
Yeah?
Happy. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, I'll go 2 and then 5. How's that?
One.
That's a double.
Councillor Kelly Marsh, proud councillor from Shell Harbour. Mike, the KPMG report that was released pertaining to the amalgamations, there wasn't one word in that pertaining to the 4 Illawarra councils. First part of the question, do you think that that report was that wonderful document that was supposed to be the Bible, if you could say, on what's coming in local governments and mergers? And second part of the question, we've asked you many a times to come and visit us in Shell Harbour. We need a meeting with you. We'd appreciate a meeting with you. We feel second-class citizens, Mike, because our neighbours in Wollongong have been able to secure meetings with you and we haven't. We are a very worthy city. We have the best city, and welcome to Wollongong, but Shell Harbour's better. Can we please secure an appointment with you for the betterment of the region, please?
Yeah, look, I agree. Shell Harbour is fantastic, and look, I'm happy to engage directly in terms of the Shell Harbour questions. Just coming back to the KPMG report, that was a guide, as was the work by IPART, as was the work by Ernst & Young. I mean, there's a whole range of independent views, but it's a guideline in terms of expectations of the savings you might see, which were actually I outlined. Already we're starting to see, whether it be procurement savings, whether it be assurance savings, whether it be other savings. I mean, Northern Beaches Council, it's $4 million to date. So they're not just expectations, they're actually being realised. And that's the thing. So, but anyway, I'm happy to take that offline in terms of Shell Harbour directly. So thank you. So 5, last one. Yep.
Thank you very much, Premier. My name is Romola Hollywood and I'm from Blue Mountain City Council, and I want to ask you about the IPART report that you commissioned looking at the rating system, and in particular one of the draft recommendations which says that the government should abolish the pensioner rebate scheme and instead replace it with deferral scheme for ratings for people who are pensioners. I'm hoping that you will agree to rule that out as a recommendation, but not only that, also agree to looking at the pensioner concession scheme and increasing it, maintaining it, and increasing it. We have a number of retirees in Blue Mountain City Council area. Many of them raised this issue with me through the recent election campaign.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, and look, I understand the concerns on that issue, and I mean, obviously, there's a whole range of proposals and thoughts come in terms of the rating system. You know, that's one of them. The Minister is considering those very closely. He's here, and obviously he's here over the next couple of days as well. So I'm not saying that everyone talk to him here. I'm just saying that that is part of what we need to consider in the next few months. So we do understand the concerns, and as you saw in terms of I outlined, you know, one of the positives that one of the councillors is able to do is to actually in terms of pensioner rebates, and we do understand some areas where that is a much higher proportion of ratepayers. and obviously there's a capacity to tailor services and support to them. So we understand that. So thank you. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your constructive questions to the Premier. Thank you very much to the Premier for giving us his time and his thoughts on all sorts of issues.